Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing fantastic today. Thanks for coming. How are you guys doing? Fired up, as usual? I mean, this is my first time I actually came to Thorhild, so this is a new experience for me. On the neck of the woods, driving everywhere across the province, filming videos. For those who probably don't know me, I'm a Max. I run a little website called Freedom Calendar, and I stream events on Alberta independence all over the place. Just so you know, tomorrow I'm going to Grand Prairie with the guys from Let's Talk Alberta. So I came here to this particular event because this is a very interesting subject. We're going to talk exclusively about Bill C-9. For those of you who are affected by C-9 is the censorship laws that is incurred in law. So the goal of the discussion is to go in great detail of the talks, of the legislation. If you have questions, that's going to be the time for you people to ask questions. I know that we have some people watching online as well too. Jason Lavigne is streaming on his channels, and I'm streaming as well too. Okay. Housekeeping rules here. We have some emergency exits over there on the left. There's another emergency exit here, but it's not showing an exit, but there's a door you can escape if something happens. There's obviously the main entrance over there, and that's where the washrooms are, male and female, right? Because there are not 300 genders. I think today's talk will be the appropriate way to say that in public, right? And just also for the how this is going to work is that we're going to ask you, everybody here, to mute your phones during the presentation, because always there's a phone that is going to ring, whoever ringtone, like whatever is going to ring. So keep your phones muted. And during the presentation, we're going to ask people to get your questions. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end. We have a microphone that we're going to pass it around if you have questions. If you're not comfortable asking questions on a microphone, I knew it's going to happen. Turn it down. We can laugh about it. That's good. So there's a cue sheet over there, so you can ask questions, and we'll go through the questions as well. So if you're not comfortable, it's up to you. Okay. So before starting the meeting, thank you. Before starting the meeting, let's go in prayer. Okay. So, Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus Christ, we thank you for your presence. We pray for your blessing. We thank you for the opportunity for being in us today in these challenging times up ahead. If we look at what's happening right now, I know that there's a lot of confusion up there of what is true, what is false, especially if you look at Matthew 24. That's exactly what we're dealing with right now. And we declare your peace and your strength in this time. We pray for truth and strength, and we also pray for protection for the people who are attending this, the people who are watching online, and also for the speakers as well. So thank you, Holy Spirit, for being with us today. In Jesus' name, Holy Spirit, amen. So what does have on the plate today? We have two speakers. One is Ron Robinson, and the second, Jason Lavigne. So Ron Robinson is the interim. Are you interim or president? No, interim leader of the Alberta Independence Party of Alberta, and he is a former EPS social prosecutor. No, I was a detective for Edmonton Police. So he's going to go through the long detail about Bill C-9. And I was very surprised when you were talking about Bill C-9 in Red Deer with Jason Lavigne. That was very interesting to see the level of detail that you're going to bring us here. So thanks very much for coming, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Max, and thank everybody for coming tonight. It's nice that you were able to get the time to come out and have a listen to us. And my talk, like Max says tonight, is going to be on Bill C-9. And just to give you a little bit of my background, I was a police officer in Edmonton for 25 years, where I worked as a patrol constable in various roles. I was a division crime analyst and then was promoted to detective, where I worked in a joint EPS RCMP intelligence unit on organized crime. As an intelligence officer, I also trained police, customs, and corrections officers across Alberta in organized crime investigations. I developed policies for specialized investigations at the local, provincial, and national level, was a guest lecturer at regional, national, and international conferences. I planned multi-agency operations and was the liaison between provincial, national, and international police agencies. Since leaving policing, which has been a very long time now, I've been a private business owner, and in 2023 became in politics mainly because of the COVID lockdowns. I was a constituency association president, then policy director for the provincial board, and currently, as Max said, I'm both the president of the provincial board of directors as well as the interim leader of the Independence Party of Alberta. Like many people, I don't believe there was a need for this bill at all. And it still raises many concerns for me about the motivation behind it. Canada already had appropriate hate crime laws in the criminal code. We didn't need changes or amendments to the existing laws. All we needed was to ensure equal and fair application of the existing law when circumstances demand that it be enforced. Now, Sean Fraser, the Liberal Justice Minister, said Bill C-9 was to address rising anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, transphobia, and homophobia, but the concerning part of what he said was the absolute failure to mention anything at all about the hatred and attacks on Christians in Canada. Since 2020, 24 churches have been burned down in Canada due to arson. Did you know that Christians are the most persecuted religion worldwide today? It isn't surprising when you look at the hate-filled statement that was made by Justin Trudeau to Pastor Steve Long when he said that evangelical Christians are the worst part of Canadian society. Now, I would view that as promoting hatred against an identifiable group. One of the amendments in C-9 was to repeal Section 319, subsection 3B of the Criminal Code, which offered a defense of good faith use of potentially violative religious text, which is important to keep in mind. The text that Bill C-9 repealed says this: no person shall be convicted of an offense under subsection 2, subsection A, if he establishes that the statements communicated were true. Now, this next section, subsection B, is the section that was changed. If, in good faith, the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. The key to this defense is that the person communicating what's alleged to be hate speech must have believed in good faith that what he or she was saying was true. This is the subsection that was removed from the law. The same goes for the section on anti-Semitism, where it said, no person shall be convicted of an offense under subsection 2.1 if in good faith the person expressed or attempted to establish by an argument an opinion on a religious subject or an opinion based on a belief in a religious text. The concern that the Bible is being criminalized comes from the removal of these good faith defense clauses in the use of religious scripture, and it's a valid point. This is likely going to result in the easy prosecution that I believe of Christians for declaring biblical truth. And in my opinion, when you look at the track record of the Liberal government, my bet is the only people this law will be used against will be Christians. Can you imagine a pastor giving a sermon in a church and reading a passage from the Bible where it tells us that homosexuality is a sin? he may face criminal prosecution if someone is offended by that. And that's ridiculous. Every one of us should be concerned when the Liberals have said their intent with that bill is to make it easier to lay hate charges against people. Before this bill was passed, there was legitimate concern over whether C9 would give appropriate guidance to police and prosecutors regarding the bar that has been set by legal precedent. This bill, whether intentional or not, now signals that the bar is lower than that set by leading jurisprudence. And the result of this may be that charges are laid too easily, resulting in a chilling effect on expression and public debate, even if charges are subsequently dropped or an accused is later acquitted. Because all that tells me is that you never should have been charged with anything in the first place. Currently, the best example we have of how this law is likely going to be abused comes right here in Alberta from the Edmonton Police Service. As soon as this bill became law, I believe it was political activists within that organization went on a campaign to solicit complaints from people so they could run out and lay hate crime charges. The police service's social media gave examples of hate speech being simple comments where people are posting online that, some people need to be deported, like immigrants who commit criminal offenses, and not minor criminal offenses, serious stuff. So we have to ensure that institutions like police agencies remain neutral in order to enforce laws in an effective and unbiased manner, because they certainly aren't. Personally, I believe the people behind that campaign should have been removed from their positions and perhaps dismissed. C9 also brings in new laws. Intimidation and obstruction offenses designed to protect access to places of worship in community institutions. The wording of this section to me is concerning, as it doesn't specifically state that the obstruction or interference to someone accessing a building or structure must be a physical one. To me, that says somebody could be across the street holding a sign just protesting something. That now becomes hate speech or a hate crime. A new hate crime offense that gets tacked on to the charge when crimes are motivated by hatred, which Ottawa believes will mean stronger penalties. A new offense targeting the willful promotion of hatred through the public display of hate symbols such as the Nazi swastika or SS lightning bolt runes, as well as any of the listed entities under Section 83.1. What that is it's a list of entities that are considered terrorist organizations by the Canadian government. And oddly enough, the Muslim Brotherhood is not included in that list, although it is in a lot of other countries. And a lot of the Islamic countries have declared them terrorists. Although they explicitly ban the Nazi swastika and symbols of terrorism, they don't ban the communist hammer and sickle or the 5-star flag of China, even though these are symbols that represent regimes that have murdered tens of millions of people. Selectively banning some symbols while ignoring others seems to be an egregious double standard, and it should be taken as a warning to all of us because of who the Canadian government has aligned themselves with, what they believe in, and their ultimate intentions. They have also included an amended definition of hate, which puts into the criminal code the Supreme Court's decision from 1990, known as the Keegstra case. And for those of you who don't know this, in the mid-'80s, Jim Keegstra, he was a teacher in Eckville, Alberta. And what he was teaching his students, were very definitely anti-Semitic views and hatred of the Jewish people. He claimed the Holocaust was fake, and ultimately he ended up being charged and convicted of inciting hatred against an identifiable group. His case went back and forth between the Alberta Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court of Canada, several times over a period of 10 years before his conviction was upheld. The Supreme Court has defined hatred in the context of hate speech and hate propaganda offenses as extreme manifestations of detestation or vilification directed at an identifiable group, rather than a simple disapproval or criticism. Now, C9 also amends Section 319, subsection 7 of the Act by adding the following definition. Hatred means an emotion of an intense and extreme nature that is clearly associated with vilification and detestation. Now, I think that's really important for everybody to understand, because when you look at the definitions of vilification and detestation, the Oxford Dictionary defines vilification as the act of saying or writing unpleasant things about somebody or something so that other people will have a low opinion of them. And detestation as the feeling of hating somebody or something. It's characterized by intense hatred or abhorrence, and abhorrence is defined as a strong feeling of hating somebody or something, especially for moral reasons. But if you're a Christian, you should know that you can hate the sin, but you don't hate the sinner. This bill assumes that if you speak out with a strong moral conviction, you obviously hate the person or group, and that's wrong. That should never be in there. So let's say you're out speaking and you're talking about, that you disagree with homosexuality or transgenderism or drag queen shows. Potentially, you could be charged with promoting hatred against that group. Where previously you could defend yourself under the good faith clause, now you're being put into a position where the courts will decide on a subjective basis what your emotional state is. In my opinion, this will turn the judicial process into political theater for political purposes. Imagine the threat the legal system now becomes to someone who happens to be a very passionate speaker. I'm sure all of us have heard somebody at some point in time where they're really passionate about something they're talking about. And talking about any of those subjects doesn't mean you hate people, but they can now use that against you. This can also put athletes into the same predicament. What women who speak out publicly against transgender men what about women who speak out publicly against transgender men and women's sports? That can now become hate speech as well. You will also have to be concerned about what you post online. Will a meme that you share or create be seen by someone who then calls police to claim that you're promoting hatred against them because it offends them? Or will the government have the police scouring the internet for posts they find undesirable like they do in the UK and other countries in Europe? Just in 2023 alone, over 12,000 people were arrested for social media posts in the UK, and over 1,100 were convicted.
Less were arrested in Russia. Less were arrested in China.
Yeah.
That's shame.
This is the type of despicable public solicitation the Edmonton Police Service was promoting by suggesting that you report your neighbor for saying things like, send them back home. That's not a hateful saying. That's your opinion. And we're supposed to have free speech in this country? Well, we obviously don't. So you have to ask yourself as an Albertan, do you agree with the alliances that the Carney Liberals are making? Isn't it ironic that while subjecting Canadians to extreme hate legislation, Mark Carney's been openly promoting hatred of our best and strongest military and economic ally, the United States. He has created more hatred against Americans than anybody I can remember in history. And all this while he's been working to create a strategic alliance with communist China to bring Canada into his new world order. Do you think you would see the day when Canada, a nation that once sent men to war to stop the spread of fascist and communist governments, would now be entertaining an alliance with a communist nation that has murdered up to 80 million of its own people. And let's not forget that Carney is bringing foreign mercenaries to fill the ranks of the Canadian Army. I can envision only one purpose for this, and it's not for the good of Canadians. As I said earlier, I believe the only Canadians at risk of having this law used against them are Christians. And this is only the beginning. As our federal government becomes more and more totalitarian, I believe more laws will come first to restrict and then to criminalize all things Christian in any event. Carney has also talked about joining the European Union, which I believe would be an absolute disaster for Canada. If you know anything about the World Economic Forum and their goal of a one-world government, then you probably know that they have infiltrated almost every Western government, especially those in Europe. For those of you that don't know, Carney was a director of that organization and was formerly Trudeau's puppet master. So he was calling all the shots. When you look at Europe, it isn't the Europe of old, just like Canada is not the same Canada we grew up in. Whether you want to call them leftists, socialists, communists, or whatever, many of the governments within the EU and here at home appear to have leaders that believe in totalitarianism. If you listen to interviews of Klaus Schwab, this has been the result of his long-term plan to infiltrate Western governments through the World Economic Forum to create a one-world global government. Last year at the Munich Security Conference, Vice President Vance gave some examples of what is happening across Europe in a speech. The examples he gave demonstrates what these totalitarian governments are doing to their citizens, and it's a warning for Canadians about what's going to happen here through bills like C9. In November 2022, Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and British Army veteran, was arrested by police for standing on a public street, silently praying 50 meters from an abortion clinic for 3 minutes. He was not obstructing or interfering with anyone. He was just silently praying on his own. He was spotted by police who approached and demanded an explanation of what he was praying for. He told them that it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years earlier. The police subsequently charged him, and he was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zone law, which criminalizes silent prayer, which could influence a person within 200 meters of an abortion facility. The court convicted him and gave him a 2-year conditional discharge, and he was ordered to pay more than £9,000, which is almost $17,000 Canadian, in costs for the prosecution. That's the punishment. You know, he didn't go to jail, but man, they're going to bankrupt you. You know, having a home along an access route to an abortion clinic could also potentially lead to charges under the buffer zone law if you are seen praying within your own home, depending on who happens to be walking by. If they can see through the window that you're praying, they can call the police and you can be arrested. You know, the Scottish government urged their citizens to report their neighbors if they had knowledge of them praying in the privacy of their own homes. You know, does that sound similar to COVID? Turn in your neighbors if they've got guests. And much like what the Edmonton Police Service has been promoting now, you know, let's report anybody you can think of for, you know, if they're even thinking along the lines of something you don't like. You know, in Germany, police conducted raids on citizens deemed to have posted anti-feminist comments online as part of combating misogyny on the internet. Then there's Belgium, where their totalitarian government in Brussels has said they will shut down all social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they decide is hateful content online. This came about when farmers formed a convoy in 2025, much like the truckers' convoy here in Canada during COVID. All they were doing is protesting government policies. Carney's Bill C-11 gives the Canadian government the same powers to do that to us. And let's not forget the truckers' convoy here. What did they do to the people who attended? They were freezing their bank accounts. And that's not because you really did anything wrong. You have a right to protest in this country if you're protesting peacefully. They weren't breaking laws. They were just protesting unconstitutional policies the government was forcing on people. But getting back to C9, why should we be concerned? Isn't protecting people from hate a good thing? As a former police officer, I say yes and no. It's important that we as a society ensure that a class of people are not targeted by falsehoods that deliberately create an atmosphere provoking violence against them. This is important in maintaining a civil society. However, freedom of speech is the most important God-given right we all have. Codified freedom of speech should be there specifically to protect speech that others find offensive or distasteful. I believe the only time speech should be limited is when there are direct threats or incitements to violence against a person or a group of people. Currently, the bills the Liberals are putting forward and passing are bills that are stripping us of our freedoms. I look at them as bills of creeping totalitarianism. Bills like C2, C8, C9, C11, C22, C34, they're all bills, as I see it, to create a surveillance state within Canada. If you've been paying attention to any of the hearings in the US, they've already talked about the AI data centers that are being built that are there strictly to harvest personal information so you can be tracked every second of every day. So it's the government can spy on you and control you. C9 is nothing more than one of the bills to control you. And I thank you for your attention. And now we'll bring Jason up and.
You excited there, Max?
As I said, I'll go first and we'll save the best for last.
Good job, good job.
Jason.
Appreciate it. A little bit taller. Boy, you guys look excited and happy. Hearing from a police officer about what they're doing. So Ron, thank you very much for giving us the what is going on and what they're doing with this and why you should be concerned. What I'm going to share with you all is how we got here and what can we do under the limited system that we have here in Canada. We shouldn't just give up. There's some things that we can do. So my name is Jason Lavigne, host of the Lavigne Show. How many people here have watched the show? Awesome. How many of you heard this about this on X, Facebook, CBC? No? I'll just warm you up a little bit because it's pretty difficult to go through this conversation. And as you can see, I'm also a TPA for the referendum, and this is one of the topics that I talk about, which is Bill C9. And truly the only way to get rid of it is to vote October 19th, option 2. But what I'm going to share with you today is what is being done today and what we can kind of do tomorrow, even if this doesn't happen. So this is a speech about whether hatred should be illegal. This isn't a speech about whether hatred should be illegal. I don't think anyone here is arguing that people should be free to threaten others, advocate violence, or deliberately stir up hatred against their neighbors. You covered that, Ron. The question before us is much more difficult. Where does hatred end and religious belief begin? Who gets to draw that line? And what happens when government removes the legal protection that existed specifically to make sure good faith religious belief was not confused with criminal hate speech? Because that is what has changed here in Canada. And today I want to explain how we got here, what Bill 9 actually did, and why Alberta government is now trying to put some protections between people of faith and the criminal justice system. I also want to be very clear about what I'm not saying. Bill 9 did not make the Bible illegal. Bill 9 did not make the Quran illegal. Bill 9 did not make the Torah illegal. A pastor quoting scripture does not automatically commit a crime. A priest teaching Catholic doctrine does not automatically commit a crime. A rabbi, imam, or other faith leader does not automatically commit a crime because somebody is offended by what they teach. The truth is concerning enough without exaggerating it. To understand what changed, we first need to understand what Canadian law looked like before Bill C-9. For decades, Canada has had a criminal code offense dealing with the willful promotion of hatred against an identifiable group, as Ron pointed out. The word willful matters. This was never intended to mean that anything offensive was automatically hate speech. It was never supposed to mean that hurting somebody's feeling was a criminal offense. The criminal threshold for hatred has traditionally been very high. But Parliament also recognized something else. It recognized that there are certain areas of discussions where difficult, controversial, and even deeply offensive ideas may arise without being criminal. And one of those areas was religion. Before Bill C-9, Section 319 of the Criminal Code provided a specific defense for persons who, in good faith, expressed or attempted to establish an argument on a religious subject or express an opinion based on belief in religious text. Think about these words. In good faith. That mattered. Parliament wasn't saying religion could be used as an excuse for violence. It wasn't saying that you could threaten somebody and then claim God told you to do it. It wasn't saying you could advocate murder, assault, or terrorism and hide behind a Bible verse. It was saying something much more reasonable. It was saying that in a free country, good faith religious debate and good faith belief in religious scriptures deserve an explicit place of protection within the criminal law. And that makes sense. Religion makes truth claims. Christianity makes moral claims. Judaism makes moral claims. Islam makes moral claims. Every serious religion tradition contains teachings about right and wrong. Every serious religious tradition contains teachings that somebody outside that faith may disagree with. Some of those teachings are thousands of years old. Some of them are completely incompatible with modern political theater and fashion. Some are uncomfortable. Some are offensive to some people. But being offended by religious doctrine and being the victim of criminal hatred are not the same thing. That is why the good faith protection mattered. There is an enormous legal difference between saying, don't worry, your religion probably isn't illegal, and saying the criminal code specifically recognizes a defense for good faith religious argument. Before C-9, that protection existed. Now it does not. And the story of how that it disappeared is important. Because the effort to remove that protection actually started before Bill C-9. In November 2023, Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet introduced Bill C-367. The purpose of that bill was straightforward. The Bloc wanted to repeal the good faith religious defense found in Section 319 of the Criminal Code. That bill did not become law. But the idea did not disappear. Fast forward to September 2025, the federal government introduced Bill C-9, what eventually became known as the Combating Hate Act. There is a very important fact people should know. The original version of Bill C-9 did not remove the good faith religious defense. That was not in the bill introduced by Justice Minister Sean Fraser. The original bill dealt with a number of other hate-related issues that Ron brought up. It created new offenses, it dealt with hate symbols, it dealt with intimidation and obstruction. Its purpose changed to the process around hate propaganda. It proposed changes to the process around hate propaganda offenses. But when the government first introduced Bill C-9, the good faith religious defense was still there. Then the bill went to committee. And this is where the discussion became particularly important for people of faith. During the Justice Committee hearings, Liberal MP Mark Miller was chairing the committee. Miller's comments during the committee hearing mattered because they gave us an insight into how at least one senior MP involved in examining the law viewed certain religious texts. During questioning of Christian Legal Fellowship Executive Director Derek Ross, Miller specifically raised passages from various books from the Bible. He referred to the passages dealing with homosexuality and characterized some of those passages as containing clear hatred. Think about that for a moment. He wasn't talking about somebody throwing a brick through someone's window. He wasn't talking about someone threatening or to murder somebody. He wasn't talking about someone organizing violence. He was talking about books of the Bible. And here he was raising those passages in the context of a discussion about whether the good faith religious defense would remain available. That should concern people of faith. Not because Mark Miller gets to personally decide what is criminal. He doesn't. Not because reading Romans suddenly sent someone to jail. It doesn't. But because it demonstrated exactly why the statutory religious safeguards mattered in the first place. If lawmakers themselves can look at ancient religious texts and describe portions of them as hateful, then the question of who decides what crosses the line between theology and criminal hatred becomes very real. And this should not be treated as only a Christian issue. If the government begins to act as an arbiter of which traditional religious teachings are acceptable and which are hateful, every faith community should be concerned. And frankly, atheists should be concerned as well. Because the same state power that can be used against one unpopular religious belief can inevitably be used against unpopular political beliefs and expressions of conscience. December 2025, the Bloc Québécois brought forward the amendment to Bill C-9. Bloc MP moved that was known as an amendment PQ3. And the language was remarkably simple. Paragraph 319.3 sub B of the Criminal Code was to be repealed. Paragraph 319.3.1 sub B was to be repealed. Those were the religious defenses. The Bloc had tried to remove them through its own legislation before. Now it was using Bill C-9 as a vehicle to do it. And the amendment passed the Justice Committee by a vote of 5-4. The Bloc supplied the amendment, but it did not pass by the Bloc alone. 4 Liberal committee members joined the Bloc members and voted in favor. The 4 Conservative members present voted against it. So when we talk about how this happened, accuracy matters. The religious defense was not removed in the government's original BC9. The Bloc Québécois pushed for its removal. And Liberals voted allowing the repeal to be added to the legislation. The Bloc's argument was that religion should not provide a defense for hate speech. They pointed to extreme examples of religious rhetoric. And I understand that concern. Nobody wants someone advocating extermination or violence and then saying, well, it was in a prayer, so I'm protected. But that raises an obvious question. Was that kind of violence advocacy ever actually protected by the good faith religious defense? Good faith means something. A call for murder does not magically become good faith theology because someone attaches God's name to it. A threat is still a threat. Incitement to violence is still incitement to violence. So if violence and genuinely hateful conduct was not protected by the defense in the first place, then what do we gain by removing the protection? And more importantly, what legitimate expression becomes more vulnerable when the protection disappears? Those are questions Canadians deserve to ask. Bill C-9 eventually received royal assent on June 18th, 2026, and it came into force July 18th, 2026. And the good faith religious defense was repealed. The government says legitimate religious expression remains protected. The final law says a communication does not become hatred solely because it discredits, humiliates, hurts, or offends. The law continues to set a very high threshold for criminal hatred. Hatred is described in terms of something intense and extreme, involving vilification and detestation, as Ron pointed out. The legislation also recognizes the discussion of matters of public interest that can include religious, political, educational, and scientific statements. But there's still an important difference. before Bill C-9, Parliament said that if you were making a good faith religious argument or expressing good faith opinion based on a religious text, there was a specific defense available to you. After Bill C-9, the message is essentially this: your religious discussions is legal as long as it does not amount to willfully promoting hatred. But that is exactly where the dispute could arise. Was the sermon hatred? Was the Bible passage hatred? Was the traditional teaching hatred? Was the moral argument hatred? Was it criticism of behavior hatred? Was the religious belief hatred? And my concern is not simply whether a pastor, priest, imam, rabbi, or ordinary citizen would ultimately be convicted, because the criminal justice process does not begin with conviction. It begins with a complaint, then perhaps an investigation, the police interviews, then lawyers, then legal bills, then potential charges, then perhaps months or years before a person is vindicated. Careers can be damaged, churches can be damaged, families can be damaged, reputations can be destroyed. The process itself becomes the punishment. And that is why statutory safeguards matter. They do more to help someone at the end of the trial. They send a message at the beginning of the process. They tell police, they tell prosecutors, they tell courts, they tell citizens, good faith religious expression occupies protected ground. Now, this is where Alberta enters the story. Because Alberta cannot simply repeal Bill C-9. Criminal law is federal jurisdiction. The Alberta legislature cannot pass a law saying Section 319 of the Criminal Code does not apply in Alberta. Premier Daniel Smith cannot announce that federal criminal law no longer exists here. I wish, but that's not how this works. Justice Minister Mickey Amory cannot simply erase an act of Parliament. That is how our constitutional system works. But Ottawa does not control every part of the criminal justice administered inside Alberta. And Parliament itself left one extremely important safeguard in the final version of Bill C-9. The core section of 319, hate speech, prosecution still require the consent of the Attorney General. That matters. Because in Alberta, the provincial justice system is responsible for prosecuting most criminal code offenses. Alberta, therefore, retains an important gatekeeping role before one of these prosecutions reaches the courtroom. The Attorney General consent requirement means the accusation does not automatically become a prosecution. There's supposed to be another level of scrutiny, another decision, another opportunity to ask whether the evidence actually reaches the very high criminal threshold Parliament established, another opportunity to ask whether prosecution is truly in the public interest. That is not Alberta nullifying federal law. It is Alberta exercising responsibilities Parliament itself left with the province. And this response did not just begin yesterday. Under Mickey Amory's Justice Ministry, Alberta moved forward with the Regulated Professions Neutrality Act. That law addresses another modern threat to free expression. Because government does not need to put you in prison to silence you. Sometimes all it needs to do is stand back while the professional regulators destroy your career. A doctor may have religious beliefs. A lawyer may have political beliefs. A psychologist may have conscience beliefs. A teacher may express a controversial opinion away from work. A professional regulator can potentially wield enormous power over that person's ability to earn a living. Alberta's new approach substantially limits the ability of professional regulators to punish lawful off-duty expression and specifically recognizes concerns involving religious beliefs, political beliefs, and conscience. Again, that does not repeal Bill C-9. But it is another part of the same broader effort. Protect lawful expression in the areas Alberta controls, and then we arrive at early August of this year, only weeks after Bill C-9 came into force. Premier Daniel Smith responded publicly to concerns surrounding hate reporting and policing in Edmonton. And she drew a very clear line. She said Alberta does not believe in policing unpopular or religious-based statements simply because they are controversial. She said Alberta's policing priorities should be violent crime, illegal drugs, theft, and vandalism. And she made the point that the legal threshold for genuine criminal hatred is a very high one. That is important, because there is an enormous difference between enforcing hate crimes and policing offenses. There's an enormous difference between protecting people from violence and protecting people from disagreement. There's an enormous difference between somebody saying something hateful in the ordinary conversational meaning of the word, conventional meaning of the word, and proving criminal hatred beyond a reasonable doubt. Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis has also been directed to communicate Alberta's policing priorities to policing organizations in the province. And that brings us to where we are today. Think about the progression. For years, Canada had an explicit criminal code defense protecting good faith religious argument. The Bloc Québécois attempted to remove that protection. Its first bill failed. The federal government then introduced Bill C-9 without removing the religious defense. During the committee process, Mark Miller specifically raised various books from the Bible and while questioning the application for the defense. The Bloc then brought forward an amendment to repeal the defense. Liberals helped the Bloc's amendment pass. Bill C-9 ultimately became law. The religious defense has disappeared on July 18th. And within weeks, the Alberta Premier was publicly telling police not to confuse unpopular, controversial, or religious expression with criminality. That is the legal and political progression. Ottawa changed the criminal law. Alberta cannot undo that, but Alberta is making it increasingly clear that it intends to use the powers that remain with provincial jurisdiction to prevent lawful expression from causality, becoming the criminal justice matter. Now, there are limits, and those limits are important. Alberta cannot protect somebody who genuinely threatens violence simply because that person claims to be religious. It cannot protect assault. It cannot protect vandalism. It cannot protect criminal harassment. It cannot protect genuine, willful promotion of criminal hatred simply by declaring it religious speech, and it should not. Freedom of religion is not a license to commit crime. Freedom of speech is not a license to threaten people, but the reverse must also be true. The criminal law cannot become a license for government to suppress unpopular theology. Being offended is not a crime. Disagreeing with somebody's sexuality is not automatically a crime. Disagreeing with somebody's religion is not automatically a crime. Believing that conduct is sinful is not automatically a crime. And believing that a religious text is divinely inspired is not a crime. And the state should be extraordinarily careful before it places police officers, prosecutors, and criminal courts between the citizens and his or her conscience. That is where Alberta has an important role. Alberta can insist that hatred actually means hatred. Alberta can tell police that hurt feelings are not themselves a criminal offense. And Alberta can make violent crime a policing priority rather than unpopular opinions. Alberta can protect professionals from losing their livelihoods merely because the regulator disliked their lawful off-duty beliefs. Alberta's Crown prosecutors can insist on strong evidence before taking someone to court. And where the criminal code requires Attorney General consent, Alberta can treat that responsibility as a genuine safeguard rather than a rubber stamp. I would go one step further. I believe Alberta should adopt a clear, public, viewpoint-neutral policy for prosecutions involving religious, political, and other controversial expressions. Not a policy for Christians, not a policy for conservatives, not a policy for people who agree with Danielle Smith, a policy for everyone. Before the machinery of the criminal justice system is used against speech, Alberta should ask, was hatred actually willfully promoted? Or was somebody simply offended? Was the genuine vilification, was this genuine vilification and detestation? Or was it a controversial moral opinion? What was the context? Was this a religious sermon, a political speech, a debate, an academic discussion, a conversation in a hall north of Edmonton? Did the person actually tend to promote extreme hatred? Is there a reasonable prospect of conviction? And is putting this person through a criminal prosecution truly in the public interest? And those are legitimate questions. And they are reasonable questions. And asking them does not undermine the rule of law. It protects the rule of law. because freedom of religion means very little if it protects only religious beliefs that nobody finds offensive. Freedom of speech means very little if it protects only opinions everybody agrees with. The whole point of freedom is to protect the beliefs, the sermon, the political opinion, the conscience, and the expression somebody else wants silenced. We should prosecute violence. We should prosecute genuine threats. We should confront real hatred. And we should protect every Canadian from genuine criminal hatred. But we should never allow the criminal law to become the arbiter of theology. Ottawa has removed an important safeguard. Alberta cannot restore the section of the criminal code, but Alberta can draw a line around the powers it controls. It can insist on the highest standards before speech becomes criminal prosecution. It can protect conscience. It can protect lawful religious expression. It can protect unpopular ideas. And it can make very clear that here in Alberta, good faith, belief, and speech will not casually be turned into criminality. And that is a line worth drawing, and it's a line worth defending. Thank you very much. Now, I believe we're going to get into a Q&A. You're welcome to...
Yes. So before getting to the Q&A, I would like to... I'm just going to go on.
Now we'll invite Max up.
So I would like to also, well, thank you very much, Jason and Ron, for speaking. That's very awesome, very insightful, very interesting. A couple of things is that we have a donation bucket. Linda has a donation bucket. So we're going to this like church. We'll ask you to, if you're compelled to contribute financially, that helps paying the bills, paying the rent for the venue and additional expenses. So if you want it free, she's gonna come with the bucket. So we're gonna put some buckets and monies in the bucket. That'll be fantastic, and feel free to do so. Also, there's some merch over there. Paula is there, and also, what's her name again? Brooke. Thanks. I'm bad with names. Brooke has some very amazing merchandise where you can support our independent business owners as well too. So what we're going to do is that we're going to take a 5-minute break. So if you have questions, there's a piece of paper, there's a bucket over there, so you can write questions there. So we're going to go to an intermission period. So during that period of time, like a 5-minute break, you can put questions on the bucket. Okay, you can go to the washroom, drink some water, and go to the merchandise tables on the back. And for those who are online, we're going to also go to the online questions as well too. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in 5-10 minutes. So basically, Brandon over there has the microphone. Okay? Guys. So Brandon over there in the back has the wireless microphone. If you have questions, please raise your hand. He will come to you with the microphone. During the Q&A session, please do not interrupt while you're asking questions. Okay? We're trying to keep things as order as possible because people are watching on the stream right now. And when you do something like, I got a question here, people on the stream cannot hear you. Okay? So we're going to go to the question and answer period. So she has a microphone. We'll go from there, okay? Anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. Over there's one question there. Just make sure the microphone is turned on.
You mentioned earlier about the final regards for Alberta as the Attorney General. So what if the UCP gets voted out? What happens then?
He's laughing because we were just talking about that I was hoping that you guys would pick up on that, because that is if this current government's in and we don't switch to like an NDP, because they're 100% correct. At that point, the Attorney General, they're the last line of defense. And if it's an unfriendly one, yeah, you know the answer to that. That means a lot of prosecutions, a lot of processes of punishment, a lot of people going through the courts, for sure.
Yeah, I think we would exceed that 12,000 arrests in the UK in 1 year by probably 10 times.
And I do believe the federal government absolutely understands that. And they're going to count on that. Because even though there is a government at a province level that can withhold, prosecution or decide that's not a prosecutable offense, that's not the same everywhere. There's NDP in Manitoba, you got BC, and then if it ever changes. So it becomes, in my mind, one of the mechanisms to try and keep the system, at least in Alberta, the way it is now, and not rock the boat too much, and maybe have a party that springs up and goes ahead and gets more votes, that discourages that activity from happening. And you won't be a democratic society because of that. You're not voting your conscience. You're voting out of fear that the other guys are going to open up the courts to you. We saw this during the federal election. So many people we've spoken to. I was a federal MP candidate, and a lot of people said, love what you're doing, I really believe in you, I think you have the best policies and the best platform, but I just can't vote for anybody other than the Conservative Party of Canada for fear that the Liberals would get in. Sadly, we told them the Liberals were going to get in. They'll eventually get the majority. If you go to my X and my shows before the election, I actually said that, because that's exactly how the system was built. Alberta's votes don't matter. So we were hoping to get some more voices in there for this exact reason, to stand up to stuff like this. But sadly, the system's built to kind of suppress your actual desire. So when it comes to the next provincial election, I know how you're going to vote, because the consequences of opening up the Attorney General to a different ideology and a different party is going to be super high. So hopefully we continue to battle on that front. But ideally, October 19th is the real vote that matters in my mind, because one way to get out from the Canadian Criminal Code is to get out of Canada, and we establish our own criminal code. Then we don't have to worry about whatever they do in Ottawa anymore. So ultimately, that is the solution to this particular problem. But if we're still in this system, you are raising a very valid concern and warning to the rest of Alberta. Don't let the NDP get in there, because they'll absolutely use this as a tool. They'll weaponize it, and then you'll see all Albertans like us being targeted that way.
And just to expand on that, you have to also remember that Alberta's going to get flooded with people that the Liberals want here, so that they can vote in favor of that side, because they don't want to lose this province as a revenue source. And like Jason said, the only way we can actually get out from under this is for Alberta to get out of Canada. That's the only way. There's no solution within Canada.
Anyone here has any questions, please raise your hand. I've seen there's no questions, like no written questions. He's going to get the microphone for you. Microphone.
For the October 19th referendum, et cetera, how are we going to deal with the mail-in votes? It's unbelievable with the fraud that happened in the United States that we permit mail-in ballots. And are we going to statistically analyze it, or I can just see the fraud will be rampant?
Well, Jim, you may not like this answer, but I'll give you the answer. The only thing that's similar between the US system and the Alberta system, if you read Bill 54 and others, is the words mail-in ballot. You actually have to prove your reason for it. You're gonna have to provide a lot of ID. You can't, it's not going out to every mailbox in Alberta. You have to request it ahead of time. There's a huge process to safeguard against it. And also they're gonna be counted before all other votes are counted. So they'll actually be part of the tally right away at the very beginning, not overnight in the middle of the night. Suddenly a bunch of stuff comes in like you saw down in the US. So the names are the same, but the process is very, very different here in Alberta. There's a lot more protections in place.
Any more questions here? Oh, there's some over here, some questions there up front.
You were saying that most of this was done through the Quebec party? Yes. And do you think that that is kind of in retaliation for us wanting to separate, and that would mean that no?
No, I think what Bloc Québécois is trying to do is remove that safeguard so they can go ahead and attack certain religions themselves. They're a very Catholic-based society, and there's other religions, not anymore, but they were at one point. But I think they're trying to remove that because they want to actually go after some other religions as well. The rest of Canada, especially here in Alberta, as Ron pointed out, I believe Catholics are the target there, or Christians are the target there, and not other religions. But in Quebec, they definitely are focused on other religions.
Okay. And the other question is, like Danielle Smith, you're saying that, well, she's not going to really enforce this or have the police enforce this. But, I mean, she's quite the turncoat on many items. And do you believe for one moment that this is just a rally to keep her into power, that she's going to protect us and this and that, when she really actually is, honestly, the biggest turncoat in Alberta there is?
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's a lot of sentiment of that, or especially over the last couple of weeks. As I traveled all over Alberta, I toured with Maxime Bernier, and we did question period, and about 1/5 of all the questions was, can you trust Danielle Smith anymore? What should we do? Should we replace her? There's a lot of sentiment there. At this stage, she's at least saying the right things, and she's directing Mickey Amory and the Minister of Public Safety as well. But you're not wrong. Like, at any point, she can change that direction. I think she's certainly sitting in a very rocky boat right now on several subjects, and maybe she is. I can't speak for her mind, but what she's doing is at least she's addressing this issue quickly. I have spoken to her office a few times before this got in royal assent, before it became law, and everything I said in my speech there, I knew about before this came out. So I do think that her office and the people around her are definitely going to make sure that this doesn't turn into a tool used against us by her. But that could change with the next leader. That can change with the next election. But your question is, can we trust her? As Bruce Pardy would say, always assume that they're going to be lying to you. Always assume that they can't be trustworthy, and govern yourself accordingly and put the pressure on accordingly. So talk to your MLA, talk to some other MLAs, make sure that they're very clear with your intent that you will consider her somebody that you'll hold accountable and responsible if she changes her direction on this one.
And I'm just going to expand a little bit on a point that Jason made, actually, that both of us ended up making in our talks, is where the process actually begins, because this is where it's really important for your minister to make sure that the right procedures are followed, because otherwise, if you leave it up to the police, because the police have become so politicized over the years, you've got people within those organizations that are going to go out and make it a mission to charge as many people as they can, not caring whether they convict them or not, because as we both pointed out, it's the process that becomes the punishment. If it costs you $100,000 or $200,000 to defend yourself, you know, that's not going to do anybody any good. That is the punishment. You might get off at the end of the day, but now there's no recourse for it. You're stuck paying those bills.
One more thing I'll highlight here is I had Lawrence Birdproud dad on my show this morning. We talked about this, that when the Edmonton Police Services put out that post and they were listing some examples of what they were calling hate speech, things that you should report, that's mild to what we actually get. Like, we get death threats and we get horrible, horrible things sent our way online and privately. And the police don't touch any of that stuff. Even the death threats, they're like, well, when they show up at your door, give us a call. That's quite literally what they've told my family and I a few times now. So we know that they're not going to be doing this evenly. They're looking for certain types of people, mostly Christians, and anybody that's calling for like deportation. That's why they were highlighting some of those ones. And they're trying to, I don't know if they're trying to prosecute people more than just create self-censorship. So you guys just stop talking about this issue and stop bringing things up, because it's going to go from faith to politics. There's going to be a blurry line there. So, you know, coming out against the Liberal government is going to be considered hate speech pretty soon. It's not going to be just faith stuff. It's creating an atmosphere of fear amongst the people, because when they've got you afraid to, you know, who can you talk to, what can you say to them, they've won. And I think, you know, this is one of those things, and like Jason said, I'm 100% in agreement. You know what? If you're promoting hatred to incite violence against somebody, then you know what? You should be charged. You should face the consequences of that. But if you're expressing an opinion, you have a right to express your opinion. And whether somebody doesn't like it or not, you know, that's too bad. But you do have that right. I mean, if you're not promoting violence towards somebody, then you have the right to express an opinion. And I think it may get down at some point in time to just mass civil disobedience of what they're telling us, you know, similar to what you would maybe, you know, see in the future if they try the lockdowns again. I think Justin Trudeau would be guilty of this. There's so many things he said, and groups he identified, and targets he put on there. And a lot of the groups that have this ideology out there, you know, go punch a Nazi, that's a good thing. And then they call everybody they don't like Nazis. They're inciting violence too. But I do not think that they're going to be targeted for this kind of stuff. They're going to be protected. They may even go to events to provoke you to respond and go, there we go, got some hate speech right there. We've had an incident at our Edmonton event where it looked like somebody was trying to provoke us to be racist in order to do that. Now, I'm not racist, so it didn't work. We ended up throwing them out, but I believe this is going to be a tool used against just like this, people just like this, groups like this, having political discussions, not even necessarily faith discussions.
So,
yeah, and you know what? Sorry, Paula, were you...
Go.
You know, just one of the things is, you know, even in places like, you know, if you're sitting in church listening to a sermon, I mean, everything when it comes to policing, or almost everything, starts with a complaint. So if somebody's sitting in the audience and they're offended by what is said, and you know, to them it's very, very hateful, that can start a whole process going and end up in a complete legal process before it's all over and done with, that should never have happened.
Yeah, I'm just going to add one more thing, because it causes Paula to put the microphone down. It's the only way I can stop her from talking, so I thought I would utilize that a little bit there. My beautiful wife back there.
Well, thank you. So there's a lot of confusion. Some people think that the upcoming October 19th referendum is for separation. And some people who are a little bit more knowledgeable see it as it's a referendum for a referendum. However, how important, can you clarify, how important is this upcoming referendum on October 19th? Why is option 2 so important, not only for Bill C-9, but in general for the rights of Albertans?
We should get you a chair, because I'm pretty sure you can explain that one. Yeah, this isn't just a referendum for a referendum. This is a referendum on being respected as a province within the system. This is, I think, one more attempt to let Ottawa know we're serious, that we want change. Now, what that change will look like after a successful referendum for option 2, we're not sure yet. And do we have the right leader to do that negotiation? Will Danielle Smith do the right things for us? We don't know yet. But we need to signify to Ottawa that we are not happy with the status quo. We don't think everything's good. We need to make some change. There was a gentleman the other day that came to an event, and he was just yelling at everybody. It was a conservative event. It was for our UCP CA. And he said, "You guys just want us to become Americans and taken over by Trump." So I spent a little bit of time talking to him and got him to realize none of us want that. In fact, why do we want to go from one master to another? We quite literally want to try and stand on our own 2 feet. We believe we can, and we believe that that future will be prosperous and good for many generations. We don't need to join the U.S. By the end of the conversation, he's voting option 2, because he does recognize, even as somebody that he's not a conservative, he's an NDP guy, but he does understand that something has to change. He is not doing well, he's not getting a job, he's having a bit of an issue with mental health and getting care, so something needs to change. So no matter if you're conservative, Christian, for separation or not, this particular referendum question isn't about separation. It's about, do we want some change? And if you want change and you want to empower the Alberta government to have the leverage to go to Ottawa to see if one more shot, can we make some change? And then if the answer turns out to be yes, well, we might actually be pleased with that. I don't think that'll happen. But if the answer turns out to be no, then we go to the next stage to actually have a referendum on actually separating. So this is like a bad relationship, and you got one last chance to smarten up, as long as Alberta equips the Alberta government with that particular power by voting option 2.
And that's why it's really important that everybody gets out and votes, because you have to let the government here know that we're serious as a people, that we're not gonna tolerate what's been going on for the last 120 years.
I'll tack on to that too. One of the largest groups that's looking for self-determination and change is First Nations. 156 years of being suppressed, depressed, and oppressed by the government. First the Crown, then Ottawa. So that group actually is a lot more supportive of self-determination. They've been fighting for well over a century and a half now. And they're always been fighting here in Alberta a little bit stronger than everywhere else, because they actually see that this opportunity is happening. So don't listen to the media. Don't believe the media when they say First Nations are not in support of this. We get messages all the time. I had a gentleman by the name of Darren Grimes on. He's a card-carrying First Nation gentleman. He does a blog that's read by every chief and every First Nation organization across Canada. And he says there's heavy support for it, because this is the first time in their lives that they can see themselves being treated equally, have the same rights as everybody else, own property, will property to your next generations, etc., and not be under restrictive and racist acts like the treaties and Indian Act of Canada. So don't believe the hype of the media. Don't believe what's going on in the courts. That's just the elites doing that. So the ones that like the positions that they're in, the lawyers that like to protect those positions, and the politicians that like that whole setup to stay there, because they use that to leverage the rest of us to kind of suppress us from demanding anything. So don't be surprised if on October 20th you start seeing the numbers. And First Nations across Alberta heavily supported option 2. So I would reach out to those communities, and just remember, nobody's going to be over your shoulder. Nobody's going to know your vote. Just vote your conscience when you get to that point.
Excuse me. Well, I've been through 2 referendums myself. This is going to be number 3, which is kind of fun, interesting. It's always been very interesting and very informative. But on this one, especially concerns me, because I don't believe the government we have right now that rules us was not elected by us. They were a minority government, and the people that we voted for that were against them went, and now they're a majority government, and they can do whatever the heck they want. So what's gonna stop? It's pretty much going to have to be quite forceful if Alberta wants to ever separate. They won't make it easy for us.
No, you know what? They're going to make it as difficult as humanly possible for us. But remember, we are the economic engine of Canada. We leave, Canada flatlines. They're gone. And that's one of the reasons why they're going to fight us tooth and nail to keep us from going. But that is one of the best reasons for us to get out, because they're crashing the economy deliberately right now. They want if you look at historically other countries and their governments, when they became totalitarian, they did the same thing to make people rely on government handouts. And if you look at any one of those systems, literally millions of people, they let millions of people starve to death because they don't care. And I think we're in the same position today with the government we've got.
But we do have an ace up our sleeve. Trump, the U.S. When we do a referendum and it's voted on and it's successful, and international law and other things start to kick in, if they were to do something like bring the violence, try and force us to not separate, break international law, I believe we would very quickly get the opportunity to do a unilateral declaration of independence, which the Supreme Court does recognize as an outcome if the federal government does not cooperate in, and here's that word again, good faith. If they don't operate with good faith, we can do the declaration, unilateral declaration of independence. And the three things that are required there is you have the ability to establish a government. We have one already. You have borders that are defined. We have that already. And then you have the recognition from international partners. Dennis Kelma was a part of our tour just last week, and he let us all know that at least 8 nations have already said that they were most likely going to recognize Alberta as an independent nation if that good faith negotiation falls apart, with the U.S. leading that particular recognition. So there are ways to do it. And have you seen the Canadian military? Tampons in the bathroom, like they're buying old submarines. Like, we are well equipped to deal with anything that may come our way, because we do have a neighbor to the south that would like to see us be an independent nation. So I don't think it's going to ever get to bloodshed. And many countries in the last 50 years, through a referendum, was recognized by Canada to become an independent nation. There's over 18 examples of that. So I think it'd be very difficult for them to make it a bad faith process, because the Supreme Court itself lays out the consequences to that. And that is a universal declaration of independence.
Yeah, and
being from Quebec myself and having relatives in New Brunswick and having lived in Newfoundland for a short period of time, what I see is I left Quebec to go to Ontario because they had a wonderful conservative government. Then it changed. So I came out here 19 years ago because you have a wonderful conservative government that runs nicely. Run the province beautifully. So now what I realize, what I'm here, is that what I see happening in Newfoundland, New Brunswick, Quebec, and even Ontario, their policies hurt them. And they need us to run these policies, otherwise they wouldn't be able to. And, it would be kind of good to Alberta left so that these provinces wouldn't have the financial support to do the things that they want that actually hurt conservatism or freedoms of the Canadians.
I have a little bit more faith in the rest of Canada that when Alberta leaves, that they're going to go ahead and kind of redo how they run their economies. They'll start, because they'll be forced to. There's going to be billions of dollars that leave the Canadian economy. One more thing to remember, as somebody that was in Quebec, Parti Québécois is now leading in the polls. And that particular party is now saying, listen, if you vote us in as your provincial government, we're going to do a referendum. So they're basically doing their little mini referendum right now through a provincial election, because that's the platform. You vote for Parti Québécois, they're going to bring forward a separation referendum. And by the way, they were the first and only province that said, we're not going to go by the Clarity Act. That was a mechanism to slow us down and stop us. They recognized it for what it is. And they also don't swear allegiance to the crown anymore. So Quebec's already in a position where they're going to say, look, we're just going to go. So maybe even before Alberta, you'll see Quebec rocking that boat and putting that position on the table for Ottawa to deal with. And you're going to have two provinces potentially making the change here, which kind of takes a little bit of pressure off of Alberta, because if Quebec's doing it, we're doing it. It's not us splitting anything up. The country's just falling apart and you're watching it before your eyes. Saskatchewan will be right behind that one. They're going to get there as quick as possible too. And I think even northern BC, you might see a change there in the future. But as far as Ontario believes they're Canada. And sometime in the near future, they may be the only part left that's just Canada. But I don't see any way for them to step up and stop the process. Even if we went through the Clarity Act process, I do believe we'd have the provincial support when it came to that stage if we did the amendment formula, because they would have to be deciding, do we ever want to leave that door open for ourselves in the future, or do we want to close it forever? And there's no province, if you sit down and think about it, that wants to remove all potential leverage with Ottawa. So I think even if it did go down that road of Clarity Act, Alberta, if it did get to the 750 rule, even the provinces would support it. So, but to answer your direct question, I think this will help Canada. If Quebec and Alberta leaves, they're going to be forced to go ahead and go and get their resources, enter markets, revisit what they're doing, and maybe all provinces in the near future will be a lot more prosperous because they're going to have to be. Can you imagine in your family, like the breadwinner leaves, do you just stop and just become homeless, or do you step up and get a job and get to work? And I think the rest of Canada would actually benefit from that process.
And I have to agree with Jason that, you know, if people that are concerned about Canada and wanting to fix Canada, if you want to actually fix Canada, vote for Alberta to get out, because, you know, that's going to force the rest of Canada to either fix the messes that they've made since day one, or, you know, whatever happens to them happens to them. We need to concern ourselves with ourselves. We have to look after Alberta first.
We have some people asking questions online, so we're going to go through that. So one of the questions is, do you feel that Danielle Smith will resign after October 19 vote, or whether or not there's going to be a yes or no? Basically, the question is, do you think that Danielle Smith is going to resign after October 19, either for a successful referendum or not?
Do I go first on that one? Because I do have an answer.
Scoop.
I think Danielle Smith already has her future plans in place. And that's my guess too. Yeah, that's my prediction, because some people don't like my prediction. I think she's going to cross over to the Liberal Party of Canada and run there, because as a Conservative, you will never get elected again, period. Not in Canada as a Prime Minister, because you're not going to have the votes that you need to take you over that line, because you need Alberta and you need every seat in Alberta to do it. She's not going to have it.
I'll leave that one with him, because I didn't go that far in my thinking. I definitely think she has ambitions to be the Prime Minister at some point. She's had those ambitions since university. She hasn't been quiet about that. She shared that with many people. Anybody here watch John Bolton? Yeah. Did you see the episode with Rob Anders? Okay. You remember when he started that episode, he said, I was talking to my friend and he got me to understand. It's me. I'm the friend. Because I do believe, and this is not my hope, and I'm not wishing this into existence, but I'm just looking at the political tea leaves, that she's actually positioned herself to resign. So if it's a stay, her party's going to blame her, run a leadership review, boot her out like Kenny. She's not going to want that, so she's going to want to resign before that. And if it's a leave, she's got the option of saying, I'm not the one to lead you through this process now, so she'll bow out. So she has a position to bow out regardless of what the outcome is. Now, if it's a stay, there's a little bit more conservative support that stays in Canada, and then she can say, hey, look, I kept Canada together, maybe make a run for the leadership at that stage. Because let's be honest, if it was Doug Ford, Jason Kenney, or Danielle Smith, who do you think is going to win that one? I think Danielle would actually win that one, especially if it's a stay. If it's a leave, she's going to have some rocky waters. And I never thought about the crossing the floor one. I have to give that one some thought. But that could be a path to the PM if that is her ultimate goal. Yeah.
No, it's not, but it's, I'll say it would be politically astute for her because that's the only realistic chance you've got of becoming Prime Minister of Canada, because there's just too many votes in the East that are going to stay elbows up.
So vote October 19th to leave, because we're not part of some of this if that's the way it goes. But I do think she's positioned herself politically to bow out because she does not want to be Kenny'd at all.
Another question that we have also have online is the possibility of employees, now that Bill C-9 is effectively law, is how is it, how frequent or how is it possible, or if it's even doable for employees to be fired because of what they've done, let's say outside business hours, or if their employer finds out that they were at church or they were in an independence meeting or something to that effect. Is that something that we will see going with Bill C-9 moving forward?
Personally, all I would see that doing for employers would be opening them up to a whole lot of lawsuits.
Yeah, there's not much more to add there. Why would you destroy your business? Yeah, it's tough enough right now to keep businesses going thanks to the economy and other things going on. So I couldn't imagine that. But also keep this in mind, Max, most business leaders are very conservative, and most of them are also very Christian. They may not show it on their sleeves a lot, but we speak to business owners all the time, and there's a lot of support from those communities, so I can't see them destroying their business.
Interesting. And what about C-9, for example, if a corporation can be lied, like we'll talk about Bill C-9 affecting individuals in this case, are corporations legally can be sued over C-9? Let's say that an employee decides that whatever is, or for example, even media guys like yourself or Rebel News and such, can the corporations be liable against Bill C-9? You don't know the answer, that's great, I'm just asking.
Yeah, I don't see the liability. What may happen is some corporations may have to give up their chat logs and messages and personnel messages to see if
that will be Bill C-22 in a nutshell.
Yeah, but related to hate speech, like being subpoenaed for it, or if an employee said something outside of the business, maybe the business might be subpoenaed for information, but I don't see the liability right at this stage. I have to see an example.
We have somebody with a question here. Go ahead.
So I don't think that's a problem with the business side of things at all. But my question is, so like I was at work, there were 4 of us sitting there discussing separation. I was the only one out of the 4 to do the first signature, because the other ones were scared because of what they did to the convoy people, and none of them were going to lose their job. So now they're going to vote, and I don't think that they really understand. It's going to be like Wexit. We're just going to show up and just say, we're done with Canada. But once we start that process, who's going to start the laws to protect us so none of this, like what happened to Canada, can ever happen to Alberta again, where we lose all of our rights? I want the freedom to speak freely. I don't want to be judged. I don't care if people hate. None of that bothers me. I just want to go to work. I want to do my job, and I want to be left alone. That's why I live in Alberta. That's why I don't live in the city. That's why I live out here. And I want those protections, those rights. Who's going to start doing that for us? That's what I really want to know. And what's the process going to be to make us free?
That's going to be the creation of a constitution for Alberta, because that will be ultimately the most important document that we are going to have. There will at some point be a constitutional convention where everybody in Alberta is going to have the opportunity to participate and express their views and whatnot. So, and of course, ultimately to vote on a constitution. And, so what form of government do you want to have? All kinds of things. Like there's so much that we have actually to look forward to, because right now, when you look at things, to create your own nation, you have a blank piece of paper right now. We can do whatever we want with it. And I love the United States. I have family and friends down there, but I do not want to be part of the United States because they have the same issues that we do here in Canada right now. They've got their Democrats and Republicans. They're constantly fighting, and one changes a law when they're in power, the other one gets in and just reverses it. We've lived that Groundhog Day in this country for 120 years since Alberta's been in it. So I don't want to be part of the U.S. I think Albertans are smart enough to create a constitution, number one, that'll give you more freedoms than what the Americans have, and ways to protect those freedoms so that they can never be infringed upon. And we can do a way better job, and we'll have a way better lifestyle when it's done.
Yeah. So I'll answer that one directly. So there's two pieces to this. There's the transition from what we currently have to whatever's coming. There's the short-term transition, like what happens on day one, what happens by the end of the first month, all the way to the first year. And then what do we build after that, which is the Constitutional Convention. So first I'll talk about the transition. The Alberta Transition Council has been established. Its co-founders are Keith Wilson, who's King's Counsel, and Dennis Kelma. There's, I believe, 50 people now who's working on the white paper. It's in review stage now. I'm one of the reviewers, so I see a little piece of it, and I see how this is coming along. And all this is doing is providing for whoever is the authority at that time what the transition could look like. For example, airports, are we still going to have airspace? Are we going to have military? Are we going to have police, border control, passports? Like all of the pieces that the federal government currently provides has been chopped up into sections with a bunch of experts working on that. Now these are just drafts and proposals. They don't have the authority to implement them, but it is going to be provided to the government. That's the transitional side. And then on the constitutional side, we got lots of options. And we can see all over the world what works, doesn't work, and maybe what Alberta can do. So I went on tour with Dennis Kelma, who's really proposing he's got a draft he's working on for a republic style constitution. I had Matt Rowley on this tour as well. He's talking about a return to the original version of the Westminster system before Pierre Trudeau screwed it up. I say good luck with that. I don't think anybody wants that because they've already shown how they can pervert it, so they'll just do it again. And then you also have Bruce Pardy, who's working on a book. I'm bringing him back to Alberta. We'll go on tour, share his idea. It's a limited government, reverse the default. The government has no power except for what's iterated through the Constitution, which means the people hold all the other power. And those are three versions. And there's people working on many others. So all over Alberta, there's people writing them, they're submitting them, they're sharing them. But that's what the Constitutional Convention will hammer out. All of those drafts will come together, the best of the best will pop out, and we'll have our own constitution, which gets ratified by the people. So we will decide collectively on what new framework we have. I suspect it's going to be a republic style with a little bit more of Bruce Pardy's libertarian views in there, because he has a really good idea about flipping the default for the power. Because right now, all countries, the government holds all power except for, and then you get a charter or a Bill of Rights out of it. And this is supposed to iterate your protected rights. The default switch means they have no power, which means we don't need a charter or a Bill of Rights because we already have God-given rights. It would be what the rights of the government has that gets iterated and limited. So I think it's going to be a mix of the two. Stay tuned because we do these events all the time. We'll be coming back to Edmonton with the three gentlemen to have that conversation some more. And we did public input last time, and we'll do that again, because it's going to be a public decision.
We have a question on the back over there. If you, just a reminder, if you have questions, just wave your hand. We're going to try to get the microphone. We'll try to not overimpose over when people are asking questions. Thank you. Go ahead.
I was just going to make the point that it's our responsibility to influence all the people we know to get out and vote. Vote for option 2, whether you want to stay or go, because this is our chance for, if you want to stay, here's our chance to renegotiate the deal. But we've got all our leaders and people like the folks today presenting, but it's up to each of us, for everybody you know, to get them out to vote. And for option 2, whether you want to stay or go, this is our bargaining power. So that's something each and every one of us can do.
And I think just to expand on that, you had mentioned that there was people that at your work that were afraid to sign the petition because, you know, of the government getting their information and, you know, maybe freezing bank accounts. When I was out taking signatures for the petition, I had all kinds of people come up and tell me they will vote for Alberta to separate, but they wouldn't sign the petition for that very reason. That's the fear that's been put into people in this country because of what the government did during the truckers' convoy. That's exactly what it is. That's right.
Can you just get a microphone for him, please? Get a microphone for him, please.
He's got his comment out, yeah. And he's right. The government should be afraid of us. We shouldn't be afraid of them.
Yeah.
Over here is a question over here. Over here. Leading here. It's a question.
Hi. I don't know if this is the right venue for me to ask this question, but you know, I've kind of followed this separation thing for a little while, and there have been a lot of different town hall meetings and a lot of different people speaking. And people have actually said, well, Alberta is divided because you weren't all together. You know, you've got this group over here promoting, and then there's this group over here, and you're all promoting separation, but you're not all together. So I'm sort of wondering, like, how would this all come to pass, so to speak, if Alberta were to separate? Who's going to be the head honcho? How are you guys all going to get along? You kind of get where I'm going? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're all a bunch of different groups, how are you all going to get along? And what's our political landscape going to look like? What's our elections going to look like? Can you address that?
You know what? To answer your question, I think the best thing that has been done is to have all these groups out there speaking, because the government has not got a target on any one person. Right now, if this movement had one person taking the lead role, you would have the weight of the world trying to destroy them, their lives, their families, you name it, because that's how serious this is. So having all kinds of people out there takes the target off any one person's back. And when there's no difference between the groups, everybody has their own message, but I'll tell you what everybody wants. We want our own nation. Every group that's out there speaking wants their own nation. That's the ultimate goal, and that's why everybody's working together, although it might appear that they're, you know, segmented. We're not. We all believe in the same thing.
Yeah, behind the public persona, there's a lot of cooperation, and we do all know each other. And this is why I really enjoy conservatives and being a conservative. We'll even hold ourselves accountable and each other accountable. So if there's something that we don't like, we'll say it. Unlike the other side, which will get behind a unified message and they don't care what they do, they'll actually break laws and maybe not report their fundraising and other things. Like, take a closer look at how some of these TPAs are operating. But on our side, we hold each other accountable. And behind the scenes, we are allies. We don't have to be unified. World War II was won through allies. So Britain and France used to kill each other all the time. Like, if you look at the history of Europe, all of them were like killing each other all the time until a bigger threat came, and then they can ally together. And there wasn't one leader in World War II. Each region had their leader. They were doing their own things. Sometimes they agreed, sometimes they didn't agree, and sometimes they teamed up and stormed a beach to go ahead and advance the front line. Very similar here as well. At this stage, we're grassroots. And I love this the way it is, because there will be some people that will follow what I'm doing. And there's some people that don't like what I'm doing, but they'll find someone else that's doing what they like. And we have a full spectrum of stuff. Some people say the conservative movement and the independence movement is like herding cats. I actually say that's a lot harder, because cats don't have social media and webcams to say whatever they want all over the internet. But at the end of the day, rest assured, even if there's some bickering online, some back and forth, some capitalized letters and that kind of stuff happening, behind the scenes, we're all fighting for the same thing. And that's Alberta to make this step forward. Now, the second part of your question, how do we establish a new government? How do we get to a leader? Well, I don't think anybody here would want somebody to step up and say, I'm the leader. That's a new dictator. What you want is a bunch of people to run for the position, maybe represent regions of Alberta, and then maybe through a democratic process, there's a single leader that will lead us. And I'm looking forward to that process. And I actually don't believe the future leader that's going to take us, like our George Washington, like who's going to actually take us over the goal line, has actually popped their head up yet. I think we're going to find that person when the time is right. Very charismatic, very good at conversation, very good at negotiation, very good at unifying at that stage. But at this stage, what we need is a lot of people to go check that ballot. And if it takes a Jeff Rath or a Mitch Sylvester or a Chris Scott or a Jason Lavigne or Ron Robertson to bring their group to the table, that's what we do at this stage. And that's what grassroots looks like.
But like what she just asked is the... But what she just asked is the main reason why we're just here, right? Canada is such a large place with so many different people's aspects that we're failing as a country. And that's why we want to leave. And while we're leaving, sure, you guys are all, you got your own little missions, your own little teams, that's fine. The reason that Bill C-9 is so terrible is it shuts down debate. The whole reason we should be doing this is so we can have those debates, we can have those discussions. And then whatever comes out of those discussions and arguments is kind of the way it should go. That's how you get to a conclusion. At work, sure, I'm the leader, and I get to choose what everybody's gonna do. But some green guy who's never done the job, never seen what we do, will come up to me with a better idea than I have. And that's how it's supposed to be. And you're supposed to be able to have that communication and that debate. If you don't, because of Bill C-9, then what? We've got nothing.
Well, that's the current system we're in that we're trying to get out of. Now, the good news is when we get to the stage of the Constitutional Convention picking a new leadership, we're out of the Canadian Criminal Code and we're out of Bill C-9 at that stage. And if you look at how the U.S. did it, they had delegates from each region that was represented and elected by the region and then brought forward their concerns and their desires at the Constitutional Convention. It'll be very similar. And with technology nowadays, Max will probably stream the whole thing. You guys will be watching now Max's stream of the Constitutional Convention, getting in the Q&A as well. It's going to be a very modern way of getting that information and those good ideas forward. I have no worries that Alberta is going to succeed at that step. And I'm thinking it's going to be a very good template for the rest of the world, not just Canada, but even the Western world on how to get out from a tyrannical government, how to get out from that, and then build your own. And that could be why we're going to be faced with a lot of resistance from the establishment, because we may be the key that opens the door for many other parts of the Western world to kind of ship up and fix itself up. So this is why we're fighting so hard. We travel, several hours to come hang out at a town hall. By the way, this is a very Albertan thing to do, town halls. You don't see this happen in Ontario, like ever. They do concerts, so they don't do this. They're not as engaged in their future as Alberta is. This is why I have no doubt we're going to get there.
And I can say this about the people that I've met through my travels. Basically, the conservative, independence-minded people that have come out to all these events, you're all leaders. And it's up to you to keep getting the messaging out and get people to vote on the 19th, because you guys are the ones that are going to make the difference. I mean, we're all just one vote, but if we can influence 10 friends or family, And when I was saying earlier about people being afraid to sign the petition, they were all saying that they would, they're going to vote yes for independence. So I think, the numbers that we got on the petition is going to be nothing compared to the number of votes you're going to get for the referendum.
With the referendum coming up, a lot of our younger generation or kids that are just turning 18, what is required for them to go and vote?
We have that question all the time, and I had a young person come up at an event and ask, how do I, because she was ready to go, but how do I talk to my friends? So I asked her a few questions, and I said, well, currently, what is like the number 1 and 2 concern for your friends? And it was employment, you have to be able to get a job, and whether or not they'll be able to get housing and be able to start a family. Then my follow-up question with her was, well, does that mean a lot of them are still at home? And she said, yeah. I said, well, let me share a stat with you. About 20, 25 years ago, the average first-time home buyer age was 24. Today, it's 44. It takes an extra 20 years to save up the down payment to get into a mortgage and get your first house. You used to be done at the age of 44, paid off your mortgage. Now they're getting started. So I said to her, have a conversation with your friends, because it sounds like they want to be sovereign from their parents. They actually want to be autonomous human beings. They want to get out there and do their own thing, their own way. They actually have that in them. And currently, under the system that we have now, they can't get work, they can't get homes, they can't even start a family, they're not even having babies. This is all becoming a major problem. But get them to realize that they actually want to be sovereign human beings. And the best way to get a prosperous future for them and their future family is to have a sovereign nation as well, outside of Canada. So hopefully that will help them. Now, another thing I want to share with you, there's way more support than you know. They don't come to these events. They don't come to town halls. They do a lot of stuff online, and they have their own little conversations. There's a lot of support with the young people. Even though you don't see them here. Anybody under 40 here? Max? Yeah. Yeah. They are paying attention because of those things I just said. Their number 1 and number 2 concern is jobs and whether or not they can find a home.
But I guess my question is what identification do they need to vote on the 19th? Because I brought my daughter to sign for like the petition, but she needed a valid bill, but she still lives at home. So you phone insurance to get that valid bill for proof, so she wasn't able to sign that day, right? She had her license, but you needed something else. So what do the younger generation need for the 19th to be prepared?
Don't wait. You can register now and become on the voter registry right now. You can go to Elections Alberta and sign up. There may be a process where you have to go to like a registry and show some proof of stuff to get it done, but don't wait till the 19th. Get it done now.
Local registry?
Yeah, go to the website, Elections Alberta, to see if you can get it done there. You may end up having to go to the registry if you need additional documents, but this is a very secured one. You need to have ID, you need to be on the voter registry, and don't wait till the 19th, because you may find out you don't have enough and they won't let you vote. They're not gonna, it's not open like in the US, you just show up with no ID and you can vote. So get started now. Tell your young people to go to Elections Alberta website, fill out the registry information, and if there's anything that's needed, you may have to take another step and get it done now.
Okay, so just an Alberta license or Alberta picture ID would not be valid enough?
No, I think you need 2 people. Go to the Elections Alberta website to confirm, okay? Because the most important thing is you can check if you're on the voter registry through the Elections Alberta website, and if you're not on there, then you're going to make sure you get on there before October 19th. Get that process done.
Perfect.
Generally speaking, if you were if she voted in the last provincial election, she's good to go.
Yeah, but she's asking about new people, new young people who didn't vote yet. Just go to the Elections Alberta website, check the registry, see if you're on there, and if you're not on there, start the process to get yourself on there.
If I gave a piece of advice for that specific, because I think she's probably, how old is your daughter? Probably.
Well, my daughter's 23, but my son's turning 18 next month.
Okay.
We just had a discussion today.
Okay.
Guess what you're doing on the 19th? You're going to vote.
Well, actually, if I give you some advice, my suggestion is for her to get a cell phone bill under her name and then wait 2 months and then you go to the register, do all the process that Jason was talking about, and that actually gives you the proof, the proof of residency that Elections Alberta needs to do that. But this is something like more on the legalese side of things. Because I have the same situation because I wasn't living in Alberta when the election came, so I have to do some extra paperwork. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done through Elections Alberta, but one of the things that she can do right now, and this is something that correlates to Jason's point of view, is to start the process right now. So by the time you get to October 19, you might be probably just over too late.
You can also, if she has a box number, because that's the problem on your driver's license, you have a box number, you can go and get your legal address added to your driver's license, and then you won't have any problems.
Well, we can't do that now.
Yeah, you can.
Oh yeah, she can.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that can be done. I mean, this kind of goes outside of the scope of the town hall, but all those questions can be easily answered by any registry office on Elections Alberta. So my strategy will be, first and foremost, check with them first, and they will guide you to the process. Just a matter of fact, when I was signed for the petition, I actually have to use my company registration and my driver's license, because there was a mismatch between my leasing agreement for my apartment and other things. So I have to use my incorporation papers from a company, because that actually shows my address, because that proves I'm a resident in Alberta. That's what they're looking for. But again, we can talk for 20, 25 minutes. Go with Elections Alberta and check with the registry. That's first step.
Yeah, don't wait. Get going now. All right, well, I want to thank the organizers for putting this on. You guys are amazing, reaching out, putting this on.
Thank you all again for coming tonight. And it was a very good discussion that I think we had here, and I hope your questions, or a lot of them, have been answered.
And there is a small announcement I want to share with you guys. I was asked to do this. So
Is that for the whistle stop?
No.
Oh, no.
It's Benita. She reached out. If you don't know Benita, you'll be
Westlock.
here one day. Okay, so there's a float in the parade in Westlock Friday, August 14th for people that are supporting the independents, and they need people to wave some flags and distribute flyers. And this will be on the stream. She said put it on there. I'll give her phone number, 780-349-0181. So if you can get to Westlock on Friday, August 14th, there will be a float in the parade, and they're looking for people to participate. Just doing my civic duty, getting that message out.
Well, thank you very much for being here.
Well, before you run, let's give a huge applause to Max for being up here.
Absolutely.
Yes. So.
Oh yeah, you guys can join us in Mirror on Saturday, August 15th. It's an appreciation event. It's not a political event where we're doing speeches. It's literally for the canvassers, volunteers, supporters, campaigners. If you played any role, even just quietly supporting, come on out. It's going to be a bunch of music, a bunch of food. It's free to enter. You grab some vendor stuff, some food as well. Chris Scott, T-Bones will be there. Who's what? Mir is just east of
the Whistle Stop Cafe.
The Whistle Stop Cafe. Yeah. So it's about, 3 hours from here? Down to 2?
I don't know. I will say Highway 21 and Highway 50.
Yeah.
That's about 3 hours from here.
Yeah, about 200 miles. Yeah. And also going to be
Lacombe.
streaming
It's not
that
far
event
from
as
Lacombe.
well. So
It's not far from Lacombe? Yeah. It's just east of Lacombe?
20 miles from Lacombe.
What's that, Lotte? Oh, yeah? It was yeah. But it'll be worth it. It'll be some great music. It starts at 11 with the vendors. The music starts at 1. Max, you're going to be there?
Yep.
And it'll be a good time. Just bring a chair, bring your family. It's a family event. So if you can make it out.
Are we going to have some bounty castles?
I don't know.
Oh, no. We need to have some bounty castles to make things more official and make some people angry. No, just kidding.
Yeah. But thank you all very much for spending your Tuesday with us. Really appreciate it. You guys are lovely. Great questions. I really like your question. Why is there no leader? because they would be taken out. You see the hit pieces they make now? Can you imagine? I'm expecting mine in September. I don't know what it's going to say, but they're going to come out with something. But I thank you all very much for being here. Love you all very much, and God bless.
And thank you very much for the 300 people watching online, by the way. Yes, 300. So, I was saying, I was talking about 300, 400 people watching online. So,
I love you all very much.
yes, we love you all. Thanks a bunch.